The grand hall of the palace shimmered with gold and crystal, but the tension within was as thick as the desert heat outside. The billionaire sheikh stood towering near the colossal oak table, his dark eyes blazing with frustration, lips pressed in a razor-thin line. Today's negotiation was more than a mere deal. It was the key to solidifying an empire, yet the silence of the missing translator gnawed at his pride. The scent of jasmine and oud hung heavy in the air, candles flickering shadows over the intricate mosaics that told tales of ancient kingdoms. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, a vast ocean of sand that mirrored the emptiness growing in his confidence. Servants moved silently, their footsteps whispers on polished marble, unnoticed against the loud storm gathering behind the sheikh's calm facade. He was a man who commanded fleets, built dynasties, and crushed rivals with a glance. Yet now, with every ring unanswered and every second slipping away, that authority cracked. His jaw twitched. The translators, his usual lifeline, were nowhere to be found. Without the crucial voice to bridge this diplomatic chasm, the deal was slipping through his fingers like grains of sand lost to the desert wind. Across the room, beneath the towering archways and golden chandeliers, stood Layla, the maid, unseen by the world. Her hands folded calmly in front of her apron, eyes sharp and alert. She had observed the unfolding chaos in silence, cloaked in humility, yet armed with an unexpected gift. Languages were her secret, a talent nurtured in whispered lessons stolen between chores. To others, she was invisible. To her, none of these walls confined possibility. She watched the sheikh's growing agitation, his fingers drumming the table with impatient fury, the rigid set of his shoulders hinting at a man barely holding himself together. Courtiers exchanged nervous glances, the room thickening with unspoken fears. The stakes were impossibly high, and failure was not an option. Yet no one dared to breach the protocol, even as hope began to dwindle. Layla's breath caught as she stepped forward, heart pounding beneath her modest dress. Her voice, though quiet, cut through the murmur like a sudden breeze stirring the desert sands. "Your Highness, if I may." Heads turned, eyes widened. The sheikh froze, caught between disbelief and the desperate impulse to grasp at any lifeline. The room held its breath. In barely a minute, Layla bridged the silence that had threatened to suffocate the grand negotiation. Words flowed seamlessly from her lips, translating complex terms with precision that no seasoned interpreter could rival. The sheikh's frown softened, his gaze flickering with a new unspoken respect. The impossible had happened. A mere maid, once overlooked, had not only preserved his empire today, but shattered invisible barriers of pride and isolation. For the first time in a long while, vulnerability and strength danced together within him, weaving a fragile but undeniable connection. The walls he had built around his heart trembled, a quiet invitation to trust. Suddenly the vast palace no longer felt empty. Something new was awakening, a story yet to be told. Before the next secret of this vast emirate unfolds, make sure you're part of our journey. So many destinies will intertwine, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. If your heart is already racing for this billionaire sheikh, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, And what twist do you think awaits? Your passion for these stories fuels us to continue. Thank you for being with us. Layla's voice lingered in the grand hall like an unexpected breeze, stirring the heavy air, suffused with gold and shadow. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes, dark and commanding, fixed on her with a flicker of astonishment, then grudging respect. The courtier's whispers faded into a tense silence, as if the palace itself held its breath. She stepped closer, the soft rustle of her modest dress, a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding them. Her heartbeat still thundered in her ears, each pulse a testament to the courage it had taken to break protocol. Yet as her words wove the intricate tapestry of negotiation in flawless tongues, the Sheikh's strict composure began to crack, revealing the man beneath the empire, the man wrestling pride and desperation. For long moments, the grand hall vibrated with the fragile hope that victory might yet belong to them. Then the Sheikh allowed a rare, subtle nod, a gesture of trust that carried immense weight. But beneath that momentary truce, his storm of emotions churned. This was no ordinary matter of diplomacy. It was a crossroads where his legacy and his heart collided. When the last word finally left Layla's lips, the room exhaled in relief. The deal was saved, but the Sheikh remained silent, his gaze now fixed on the maid who had shattered every expectation. In those deep, burning eyes, she saw a new question, unspoken but palpable. Who was this woman who dared to rise beyond her station? The courtiers swiftly resumed their ceremonial dance, their whispers now tinged with speculation and suspicion. Yet the Sheikh's attention was elsewhere, drawn irresistibly to Layla's quiet strength. The ancient mosaics seemed to flicker in approval, as if the palace itself acknowledged the shift. In the stillness that followed, Layla felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken judgments pressing down. She knew that stepping forward was only the beginning. The path ahead was riddled with intrigue and peril. But beneath the palace's glittering facade, she had glimpsed a crack, a vulnerability in her formidable master that beckoned with fragile possibility. The Sheikh moved abruptly, straightening his flowing robe as if to mask the vulnerability that threatened to betray him. He approached Layla with deliberate steps, each echo against the marble like a drumbeat of fate. Layla, his voice was low, tempered by the remnants of his frustration. Your talents were hidden well. Tell me, how many more secrets do you carry behind that quiet gaze? She met his stare steadily, neither bowing nor retreating. More than you might expect, Your Highness. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of the Sheikh's lips, a brief softening in the desert's harsh ruler. It was a spark that neither knew yet how to nurture, but its warmth promised transformation. Before the conversation could deepen, footsteps echoed sharply from the gallery. A shadow slipped through the heavy curtains. Tamir, the Sheikh's most trusted advisor, with a message wrapped in both urgency and dread. His face bore the cold imprint of secrets too long concealed. You arranged the translator, but there's been a breach, Tamir announced, his voice a blade slicing through the newfound calm. The Sheikh's eyes darkened instantly. Explain. Tamir's gaze flicked to Layla briefly, a silent reminder of fragile alliances. Security discovered a spy embedded within the palace grounds, someone who has been leaking our plans to rival factions, eager to destabilize the empire. A chill rippled through the hall as, though the desert wind itself carried whispers of betrayal. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, his mind racing to assess the damage. Who? His tone was a growl laced with the command of a man who had conquered empires, but had yet to face this hidden enemy. Tamir hesitated, then spoke the name that plunged the room into a suffocating silence. It's someone close, Your Highness. Someone within the inner circle. Layla's breath caught. She had learned quickly that power in the palace was a gilded cage, where friends and foes wore the same mask. The Sheikh's gaze swept across the courtiers gathered, hunting for the invisible traitor, hidden behind smiles and pleasantries. His empire had its walls and towers, but now he faced an enemy who walked among them. Lock down the palace, he ordered sharply, voice slicing through the tension like a scimitar. No one leaves until I know who dares to betray me. As the courtiers dispersed in controlled chaos, Layla found herself standing quietly beside the Sheikh, the heat between them simmering beneath the veneer of authority. You did well today, he said softly, the compliment both rare and significant. But this palace is more dangerous than you know. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Then we will face it together. The words hung between them, a fragile pact, forged in urgency and unspoken yearning. For a moment, silence reclaimed the hall. Then, an unexpected figure entered. A woman cloaked not only in silk, but in secrets. Her smile was as cold and calculating as the desert night. Your Highness, she purred, the time has come for truths to surface. Her eyes locked onto the Sheikh's with a challenge that promised upheaval. The Sheikh's expression darkened instantly, the weight of 1,000 battles reflecting in his gaze. He recognized in her the threat that could unravel everything, and perhaps the secret that could shatter his carefully guarded heart. Layla stood frozen for a heartbeat, then instinctively stepped forward, the scent of jasmine and oud mingling with the rising storm. The woman smirked, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. The empire is built on secrets, Sheikh Billionario. But some secrets demand a price far greater than gold. The Sheikh's hand clenched into a fist, knuckles white against the embroidered fabric. His voice was a low growl that echoed through the cavernous hall. Tell me everything. As the woman's eyes glittered with dark promise, the palace seemed to pulse with danger and desire entwined. An unbreakable bond of love and betrayal. In that moment, Layla realized her world had just tipped on its axis. The story she thought she understood was only beginning. And beneath the glittering chandeliers, behind the carved marble pillars, something far more dangerous than politics was awakening. An ancient secret, waiting to claim them all. The woman's words hung in the air like a threat carved from ice. The grand hall, saturated with the perfume of jasmine and oud, suddenly felt suffocating. A gilded cage narrowing around the Billionaire Sheikh's chest, His gaze locked on to the intruders, sharp and unyielding, as if willing her to speak her secrets without hesitation. She smirked, her eyes gleaming with the cruel satisfaction of one who holds the power to unravel kingdoms. "The alliances you forged with iron and gold," she murmured, "rest on foundations far more fragile than you ever imagined. And soon, those foundations will crumble." A chorus of whispers stirred among the courtiers, their eyes darting nervously between them. 3 figures. A heavy silence fell again, broken only by the soft rustling of silk and the distant drip of water from the ornate fountain in the palace courtyard. Layla's heartbeat thundered violently against her ribs, but her stance remained firm, unwavering despite the palpable storm gathering in the room. The woman's gaze flicked toward her, as if weighing the maid's significance in this unfolding chess game. For the first time, Layla sensed that her quiet courage and hidden talents had placed her squarely in the crosshairs of fate. The Billionaire Sheikh's voice finally shattered the tension, a low growl that resonated like thunder beneath desert skies. "Speak plainly. What truths do you carry that threaten to destroy us all?" The woman stepped forward, the subtle clink of her jeweled bracelets drawing attention. "Truths you refuse to see, Your Highness. Secrets buried beneath the sands of time. Illicit deals, betrayals cloaked in loyalty, and a shadow close to you, darker than any enemy beyond these walls." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, every muscle in his face taut with the strain of controlled fury. His empire had withstood storms before, both of sand and steel, but nothing like this. Here, betrayal festered in the blood of those he trusted most. Layla caught her breath, scanning the room, as though hoping to glimpse the invisible threat. The courtiers, once vibrant, with murmurs of admiration and speculation, now wore masks of unease. The palace that had glittered like a jewel was becoming a haunted fortress. The woman's smile twisted cruelly. "Your most loyal advisor," she said quietly. "He who stands beside you, who whispers counsel in your ear. He has been the serpent in your garden." Shock rippled through the hall. The Billionaire Sheikh's hand shot out, knocking a crystal goblet from a nearby table. It shattered on the marble floor like shattered trust. "Tamir!" His voice was barely a whisper, but the accusation burned. Tamir, standing stiffly by the entrance, met the Sheikh's gaze with an inscrutable expression. No flicker of denial crossed his face. The room held its breath as the weight of the revelation settled like dust. The betrayal was no longer just a rumor, no longer abstract. It was a knife pressed against the very heart of the empire. The Sheikh took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. "Explain yourself," he commanded, voice coiled like a tightening noose. Tamir's cool demeanor cracked slightly, a shadow passing over his face. "There are forces beyond even your vision, Your Highness. I acted believing it was necessary, to protect you, to preserve what you built." His words fell like poison, wrapping the room. In a tension thicker than the desert night, Layla saw in the Sheikh's eyes the battle raging inside, a tumult of betrayal, confusion, and a desperate need to protect what was his. "By betraying me?" The Sheikh spat the words, each one a dagger. "Not betrayal," Tamir said, voice low. "A sacrifice. But sacrifices come with costs. you must face. Layla's breath caught. The man who had seemed invincible now showed cracks that no facade could conceal. In that instant, her heart, a fragile flame amidst a desert storm, flickered with a mix of fear and fierce determination. The sheikh turned slowly, eyes flickering to Layla, their depths unreadable, yet charged with unspoken questions. Was this woman, who had stepped beyond her station to save his empire, now the only anchor in a sea of treachery? "Lock the gates," he ordered. "Seal every exit. We will uncover the truth tonight." As the courtiers obeyed, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation and dread. Shadows lengthened beneath the crystal chandeliers. The palace itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the war to come. Layla remained close, feeling the raw power and vulnerability radiating from the sheikh. His hand brushed hers briefly, a fleeting contact imbued with a quiet plea for trust, for alliance, for something deeper. The chandeliers flickered, casting fractured light on the marble floor as footsteps echoed from the upper chambers. A figure appeared, a slender woman, cloaked in midnight silk, her eyes glinting with a secret even darker than the one revealed moments before. She approached with deliberate grace, every movement a challenge. "The truth runs deeper than you know, Sheikh Billionaire," she said softly, voice laced with venom and promise. "And it involves more than just treachery. It involves blood." The sheikh's expression hardened, his gaze locking fiercely onto the woman, matching her cold fire with the steel forged in countless battles. Layla's pulse quickened as the air thickened with unspoken threats and fragile alliances. The palace, bathed in gold and shadow, had become a stage for forces beyond politics, forces that could consume them all. In that charged silence, the sheikh whispered her name, a single word carrying centuries of power and the weight of unspoken bonds. Layla met his gaze, her own shining with a new resolve. The empire was trembling, the palace walls closing in. And the depths of that storm, a secret darker than the desert night, was poised to rise, threatening to shatter everything the Billionaire Sheikh held dear. The chandeliers cast fractured light on the restless faces gathered in the grand hall, shadows dancing like whispered threats amid the glittering gold. The air hung heavy with unspoken accusations, and the palace, once a sanctuary of absolute power, now felt like a labyrinth laced with betrayal. The cold woman in midnight silk held the room captive with her chilling words, each syllable a blade sharpened by years of deceit. The Billionaire Sheikh stood imperious, his dark eyes ablaze with fury and disbelief. Every muscle in his body radiated the tension of a man forced to confront a nightmare he'd long denied. Tamir's silence screamed louder than any denial. The revelation clawed at the edges of the sheikh's carefully forged empire, threatening to shatter foundations built on loyalty and blood. For a long moment, the silence stretched, thick, suffocating, filled with the weight of truth too bitter to swallow. Then the sheikh's voice rolled like thunder over the sacred hall. "Speak, Tamir. Justify your treachery." Tamir's gaze held steady, but a flicker of regret betrayed him. I acted not as a betrayer, but as a guardian of our legacy. Forces beyond the reach of even your highness threatened us all. My actions were sacrifices meant to shield the empire. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, disbelief sparking a dangerous fire behind his eyes. Sacrifices come at a price, and the price you paid was betrayal, one I will not forgive. Layla, standing close, felt the storm in his gaze, the tempest of a man unraveling, yet determined to reclaim his power. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and fierce resolve. She had stepped from shadow into the heart of this maelstrom, and now there was no turning back. In this palace, the Sheikh continued, voice low and each word deliberate, trust is a currency more valuable than gold. You have devalued it. He turned sharply, sweeping the room with a gaze that seemed to pierce every mask. Seal the gates. No one leaves without my permission. The courtiers exchanged hurried glances, masks slipping briefly to reveal bare nerves. Servants rushed to obey, the ornate doors closing with a solid finality that echoed around the marble halls like a death knell. Layla's breath caught as the Sheikh's gaze shifted to her, darker, searching, as if testing the weight of the allegiance she offered. The brief touch of his hand against hers moments ago lingered in her skin, a silent plea, rife with vulnerability and an unfamiliar tenderness. The midnight silk woman stepped forward, her heels clicking like the ticking of a poisonous clock. So much hinges on what remains buried, Sheikh Billionaire, but the deeper the secrets lie, the louder they scream to be heard. Her eyes flickered to Layla, a calculating spark that sent a shiver through the maid's spine. The fragile peace between them shattered under the weight of invisible chains tightening. The palace no longer breathed luxury. It breathed tension and impending ruin. Tell me, the Sheikh demanded, voice sharp. What price does this empire pay for truth? The woman tilted her head, lips curving in a smile void of warmth. Blood. And not just the blood of strangers. The blood closest to you. A collective gasp fluttered through the hall. The golden mosaics seemed to darken, as if shadows themselves recoiled from the venom in her words. Layla's eyes locked onto the Sheikh's, seeking any hint of the man beneath the storm of power. A man battered by betrayal, but unwilling to bow. She saw a flicker of pain buried deep, a chasm of loneliness left by centuries of command and walls. Built too high. Suddenly, the doors at the far end burst open. A figure stepped in, cloaked in regal black, crowned by a scarlet veil that framed a face both breathtaking and merciless. Her eyes, sharp, magnetic, locked on the Sheikh with a familiarity that cut deeper than any wound inflicted by enemies. Surprise doesn't suit you, Sheikh. Her voice was silk and steel intertwined. Nor does the truth you so desperately avoid. The room hushed anew, the air thick with the scent of oud, mingled with the subtle perfume of danger. The Sheikh's expression hardened. Amina, he said, the name hanging between them like a curse and a promise. What game do you play at, stepping into my domain like a shadow I thought long banished? Her smile was bitter, a flash of old pain. Not a game, but a reckoning. The empire you claim to protect is riddled with fractures, fractures that began long before betrayals brought them to light. Layla instinctively shifted closer, sensing the invisible thread weaving this woman into the heart of their unfolding storm. Amina's gaze flicked to her, a challenge laced with unspoken warning. "And you, little maid, do you truly believe you can hold the pieces together? Empires built on secrets are never restored by innocence." The Sheikh's jaw tightened as he took a step toward Amina, power and rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. The silence crackled with the promise of confrontation. "Enough," he declared, voice a razor's edge cutting through the gathering storm. "Speak your truths here and now, before this palace collapses under the weight of shadows." Amina inclined her head slightly, eyes glinting with a secret known only to her. "The blood that binds us," she whispered, "carries curses you cannot outrun. Lies, betrayals, and sacrifices made in the dark. These are the real pillars of your empire." The Sheikh's chest heaved, fury and pain warring beneath his skin. Every word unleashed was a whip cracking through the remnants of his pride. Layla watched the man she admired crumble and recalibrate before her eyes, a man wrestling with ghosts he long refused to face. "It ends tonight," the Sheikh vowed, voice breaking but resolute. "No more lies, no more shadows." Amina laughed softly, a sound that shattered the fragile hope hanging like a prayer. "Then prepare yourself, Sheikh Billionaire," she warned, stepping closer until the air between them burned. "For the darkest chapters have yet to be written, and one truth will rise that could consume us all." Her words echoed through the hall as the chandeliers flickered, the golden light wavering like a flame, about to be extinguished. Layla met the Sheikh's stormy gaze, her own resolve hardening. The empire was no longer a fortress, it was a battlefield. And somewhere in the heart of the palace, buried beneath layers of power and pretense, a secret darker than the desert night awaited its reckoning. The grand hall had shifted, transformed from a place of regal splendor into a crucible of suspicion and shattered loyalties. The chandelier's golden light flickered uncertainly, casting trembling shadows over the assembled court as the weight of Amina's chilling revelation settled like a suffocating shroud. The Billionaire Sheikh's jaw clenched, fingers trembling against the polished marble, his breath shallow, as if each inhale threatened to unleash a tempest he could no longer contain. The name, Tamir, echoed relentlessly in his mind, a dagger twisting in a wound he never thought could bleed. Tamir stood silent, his stoic mask fractured only by a flash of regret in his eyes. His posture was rigid, as if bracing for the storm he had unleashed, yet unwilling to mount a defense. The courtiers around them exchanged furtive glances, the illusion of indomitable strength around the Sheikh now unraveling before their eyes. Layla felt the electric charge of the moment pulse through her veins, the air thick with tension and unspoken questions. She lingered at the edge of the circle, her gaze sharp, sensing that beneath the surface political betrayal lay something far more dangerous, a fracture in the very soul of the empire. Suddenly, the Sheikh's voice broke the silence, low and steady, but potent with command that cut through the swirling uncertainty like a scimitar through silk. "Speak, Tamir. Justify your actions. Tell me why you chose treachery over loyalty." The words hung between them, a challenge and a plea entwined. Tamir's expression wavered, a shadow crossing his features, as if torn between duty and conscience. "I acted in the name of preservation, Your Highness," Tamir confessed, voice thick with the weight of secret burdens. "The threats that shadow this empire are insidious, creeping beyond the horizon. I chose the path I believed would protect you, even at the expense of trust." The Sheikh's dark eyes burned, hot coals on the verge of igniting a blaze. "Protect me by betraying me? By staining the very foundation of everything we have built? Sacrifices come at a price, and you have paid with treason. This I cannot forgive." Layla's heart pounded fiercely as she watched the Sheikh unravel between fury and heartbreak. The man who had once seemed unbreakable was now raw, vulnerable beneath the veneer of power. There was a storm brewing in his soul, one that might either consume or forge him anew. The courtiers shifted uneasily, the grandeur of the palace feeling less like sanctuary and more like a gilded cage tightening around all of them. The weight of distrust infested every corner, poisoning alliances and whispering threats into eager ears. The Sheikh's voice cut through the unease with finality. "Seal the gates. No one exits until this treachery is fully unearthed." His gaze lingered on Layla, dark and searching. "And keep close those who prove themselves worthy." A fragile shiver passed through Layla at the silent command. This was more than a test of loyalty. It was an initiation. The mansion's polished floors echoed with the sudden urgency of movement, the elegant torment of trust dissolving into suspicion. From the shadows, Amina's smile deepened, a venomous curl hinting at further storms to come. Her eyes sparkled with secrets yet untold, and her presence exuded the relentless danger of a predator circling its prey. "Truths long buried demand reckoning, Sheikh Billionaire," she murmured, voice silky but cold as desert stone. "You cling to illusions while the sands of your empire shift beneath you." The Sheikh's glance sharpened, muscles taut like drawn bows. "Speak clearly. What more do you conceal?" Her laughter was soft, chilling. "More than you can imagine. Bloodlines tainted by lies, loyalties tested by fire. The path ahead is carved by shadows, and not all who walk beside you bear your cause in their hearts." Layla's breath caught. The words clawed at the fragile hope she'd nurtured, a hope that trust still held sway in the palace halls. Now, every glance around the room felt like a challenge, every smile a potential mask hiding deeper betrayal. A distant murmur rippled through the courtiers, but none dared break the spell of the unfolding storm. The Sheikh turned, sweeping his gaze over those gathered, searching for the hidden spider weaving webs with deadly intent. His empire, vast, opulent, untouchable, was suddenly vulnerable, split by secrets as corrosive as the desert sun. The courtiers shrank under his gaze, their silence unanimous confession. No one dared meet it directly, each hiding their truths behind formal courtesies and measured expressions. Layla stepped closer to the Sheikh, the scent of jasmine and oud mingling around them like an invisible barrier. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet resolute. "The shadows threaten all of us, Your Highness, but the light can still find a path through." He looked down, the raw vulnerability she didn't expect surfacing briefly. The flicker of a man who had never allowed himself the luxury of hope. Suddenly, the massive doors at the far end of the hall groaned open, and a figure appeared. Draped in rich black silk with a veil of scarlet, the newcomer's presence commanded attention like a storm striking a calm desert night. Her eyes, sharp and unrelenting, held a familiarity that cut deeper than any blade. Amina. The Sheikh's voice was a mix of accusation and recognition. The name, a bitter oath and unspoken longing wrapped into one. The woman's smirk grew. The scars we hide are never truly gone, Your Highness, and the truths you deny will unravel all that you hold dear. The hall tensed anew, the atmosphere thick with impending collision. Layla's heart clenched as the battle lines drew closer, knowing that beneath the opulence and whispered diplomacy, the empire was poised on the brink of ruin, and that the storm threatening to consume it had only just begun to roar. In the deep silence that fell between them, a single word broke free from the Sheikh's lips, a declaration heavy with history, pain, and a fierce promise. Layla. The grand hall had become a battlefield, drenched in the fading glow of chandeliers, their golden light flickering uncertainly, as if reluctant to witness the unraveling of an empire. The air itself seemed charged, thick with betrayal and unspoken promises, broken like shattered glass across the marble floors. The billionaire Sheikh's dark eyes burned with a storm of emotions no crown could conceal. Rage, disbelief, and a raw ache beneath the iron-clad facade. His fingers clenched at the hem of his flowing robe, trembling ever so slightly, betraying the weight of secrets clawing at his soul. Tamir's cold gaze met his without flinching, silent as a serpent poised in the shadows, bearing the burden of a treason whispered through the palace halls. Layla stood nearby, heart hammering beneath the modest folds of her dress. She could feel the pulse of the empire's fragility beating against her own resolve. Every breath in the gilded chamber was a fragile tentacle of tension, curling tighter, with the revelation resting like a blade upon the Sheikh's heart. Your actions, the Sheikh's voice cut low and steady, each word sharp as a desert scimitar, were meant to guard our legacy, he said, the accusation lingering heavily between them. Yet you chose a path lined with deception and darkness, a path that threatens to drown all we built. Tamir's shoulders bore the scars of invisible battles, his voice steady but heavy with shadowed regret. The threats lurking beyond your vision, Your Highness, forced my hand. Sacrifices were necessary to shield what we cherish. The Sheikh's jaw tightened, an ember flaring dangerously in the depths of his gaze. Sacrifices that poison trust burn deeper than any blade. Betrayal is a wound that festers in silence until it devours the heart. Around them, the courtiers shifted uneasily, their composed masks slipping to reveal the fissures of fear. The opulence of the palace felt suddenly suffocating, walls closing in like the endless desert night, holding secrets darker than the sands outside. "Seal the gates," the Sheikh commanded, voice draped in iron resolve. "No one leaves, not until the venom is rooted out." Layla's eyes met the Sheikh's across the heavy air, the faintest flicker of warmth threading through the glory-hardened man she had come to admire. This was no longer a game of alliances. It was a reckoning with shadows that reached into the very essence of power. Amina stepped forward, her presence a cold gale sweeping through the hall. Her veil of scarlet trailed like a specter of past sins, each step a challenge to the Empire's fragile peace. Her eyes sparkled with the cruel knowledge of truths long buried beneath the weight of gold and silence. "You claim to protect your empire, Sheikh Billionaire?" she murmured, voice silky yet venomous. "But the foundations you trust are riddled with fractures. Fractures born not from enemies beyond these walls, but from those who wear your crown closest." A flicker of pain flashed across the Sheikh's eyes, a glimpse beneath the steel, the weight of history and betrayals that had shaped him from boy to ruler. The room fell deathly quiet, the courtiers' eyes darting like hunted creatures between suspicion and disbelief. Leela felt the enormity of the moment press into her chest, her courage both fragile and fierce. She stepped a fraction closer, feeling the scent of jasmine mingle with the lingering chill of treachery. "And what price?" the Sheikh's voice hardened. "Are we to pay for these truths?" Amina's cruel smile deepened. "Blood. The blood not just of strangers, but of kin. The legacy you guard walks on the edge of a knife, sharpened by lies and sacrifice." A heavy silence hung, broken suddenly by the distant echo of footsteps. The massive doors at the far end of the hall groaned open, revealing a figure cloaked in midnight velvet, her eyes piercing, etched with scars both visible and hidden. She moved with deliberate grace, a storm contained beneath silken layers. "Amina," the billionaire sheikh breathed, the name a mix of betrayal and a haunted memory. "Why haunt? My halls with ghosts best left buried." Her gaze settled on him unwavering. "You live in shadows, Sheikh Billionaire, shadows that consume all who dare ignore their truth." Layla held her breath as the tension twisted tighter, a dance poised between confrontation and confession. The palace, once a sanctuary of might and majesty, now trembled under the weight of secrets seeking light. The Sheikh's dark gaze softened briefly, caught between fury and a brittle hope. He edged forward, the regal mask faltering just long enough for vulnerability to seep between commands. "Speak, Amina. Leave no secret untouched, no wound concealed." Amina's voice dropped to an ominous whisper, echoing around the vast hall, like the first crack of thunder before a storm. "There are roots deeper than blood, and lies darker than night. The empire you cradle trembles because it is born of both." Layla's pulse pounded, each word a shard piercing the fragile hope she nurtured. The inevitable reckoning loomed, drawing the empire's rulers and servants alike into a web spun by loyalty, betrayal, and love. The Sheikh's hand brushed hers, brief, electric, a silent plea and promise, laced with unspoken fears. In that fleeting contact, the fragile thread of alliance wove tighter against the unraveling tapestry of trust. Darkness crept in beneath the glittering chandeliers, shadows pooling at their feet, swallowing secrets whispered behind silk curtains and veiled smiles. Then a voice fractured the gathering storm, a voice neither soft nor conciliatory, but fierce and final. I will not let our empire fall to ghosts of the past, the Sheikh declared, eyes blazing with a fire tempered by sorrow and unyielding will. Truths will be faced, allies chosen, and betrayals answered with justice. Amina's smile twisted, slicing through the charged air. Like a blade. Be wary, Sheikh Billionario. Some truths demand sacrifices that no crown can bear. The Sheikh's gaze darkened, every breath heavy with the promise of the battles yet to come. Layla tightened her grip on the silk of her dress, heart racing with the knowledge that the palace's grand walls could no longer shield them. The empire's heart beat with secrets ready to consume all in their path. And the story, this story, was far from over. And in the deepening silence, a whispered name escaped the Sheikh's lips, an unspoken vow poised to shatter the fragile calm. Layla. The grand hall held its breath, the air still trembling from the storm unleashed moments before. The billionaire Sheikh's piercing gaze locked onto Layla, the unexpected ally whose quiet strength had already begun to unravel the fortress around his heart. His hand still lingered near hers, a fleeting contact, threading fragile warmth into the heavy tension. The chill that accompanied Amina's arrival was like a sudden desert wind, slicing through the palace's ornate splendor. Draped in midnight silk and framed by that scarlet veil, she carried an aura of poison, wrapped in exquisite elegance. Her eyes, sharp with a knowledge far darker than any court intrigue, bore into the Sheikh with a familiarity that unsettled even his ironclad composure. "You think this empire is unbreakable," Amina whispered, voice silk-skinned venom. "But your foundations sink in sands laced with blood and lies. Trust is a currency you squandered long ago." The Sheikh's fingers clenched into tight fists, ivory knuckles, a stark contrast against the flowing fabric of his robe. His chest rose and fell with the weight of years of battles fought, not just against enemies, but against shadows cast by those closest to him. Tamir's betrayal was not just a wound to his empire, it was a fracture deep within his soul. Layla stepped closer, senses sharpened by the sharp scent of jasmine and oud that wreathed the space between them. "Your Highness," she said with quiet courage, "even the deepest shadows can yield to light. We cannot let fear shrink our legacy." His eyes flickered to hers, steady, fierce, and unyielding. In that moment, she was no longer just a servant. She was an anchor amid the swirling storm, a spark of hope in a night threatening to consume them all. Amina's smile twisted, cruel and knowing. "Hope," she spat, "is a luxury for the naive. The truth will tear your empire apart, starting with the blood that binds you." The hall's silence shattered as footsteps echoed against the marble floor, swift and decisive. Doors groaned open once more, revealing figures cloaked in shadow, faces masked by desperation and allegiance. Guards moved with rigid precision, sealing exits, their eyes alight with the grim understanding that no one would leave until the traitor was found. The Sheikh turned sharply, power radiating from every hair on his body, a tempest barely contained beneath his royal calm. "Search every chamber, question every servant, every lord. No secret is too small, no lie too hidden." He paused, his gaze softening for a fraction of a second, as it landed on Layla. "And you, stand by me. We will expose the venom within." Layla nodded, her pulse pounding like desert thunder. She felt the weight settle on her shoulders, but also a fire awaken, an unspoken promise whispered between sovereign and servant alike. The glow of the chandeliers flickered, casting fractured light onto the light. Marble, but unable to dispel the dark gathering within the palace's heart. The arrogant courtiers, their masks slipping, exchanged glances thick with suspicion. Bonds once thought unbreakable, now shredded to threads. Amina stepped forward again, the soft jingle of her jeweled bracelets the only sound punctuating the growing storm. "There is a price for every secret, Sheikh Billionario, and some debts must be paid, not with gold, but with blood. Speak plainly." The Sheikh demanded, his voice a rasp threaded with steel. "Who walks these halls with a serpent's tongue, and what darkness do they carry?" Amina's eyes glittered like shards of obsidian. "He who whispered counsel in your ear, who sat beside you, cloaked in loyalty. Tamir is the shadow that bleeds your empire dry." The accusation hung in the air, like a dagger poised for the fatal strike. Tamir, standing rigid, met the gaze. With a silence that screamed culpability, the Sheikh's jaw tightened. Rage roared like a desert blaze, but beneath it, a profound sadness unfurled. Trust shattered, betrayal carved into bones. Layla's breath hitched. She watched as the man she admired, immense in power and pride, wrestled with the devastating truth. Here was a battlefield not of armies, but of hearts and loyalties twisted by ambition. Swiftly, the Sheikh's voice cut through the court's murmurs. "Tamir, you will answer for this treason. But first, I need to know, was this betrayal born of greed or sacrifice?" Tamir's eyes darkened, regret folding his features. "Sacrifice," he murmured. "A sacrifice to protect you, to shield this legacy from enemies beyond your sight." The Sheikh's laughter was harsh, a brittle sound that cracked like shattered glass. "Sacrifice that uses betrayal as its blade is no protection, it's poison." Steeling himself, he gestured sharply. "Bring him to the chamber of council. We will convene in an hour. There the truth will be unmasked." The murmurs swelled again as Tamir was escorted away, a fallen giant, subdued but unbroken. Layla lingered, her heart pounding in tandem with the storm, roaring inside the Sheikh. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted again. From the shadows emerged a slender figure, draped in a veil of shimmering gold, embroidered with curling desert roses. Her eyes were dark pools of mystery and fire, and with a languid grace, she approached. "Your Highness," she purred, voice smooth and commanding. "The Empire's wounds run deeper than treason. Bloodlines twisted, debts unpaid, and secrets older than the desert itself." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, nostrils flaring, as if inhaling the scent of truth and danger entwined. "Who are you to speak such riddles? Speak now, or be counted among the lies. I will root from my kingdom." She lifted her veil slightly, revealing a face framed by waves of midnight hair and eyes that mirrored storms. "I am Zara," she said softly, "one who knows the shadows better than most. Your empire's greatest peril is not the treacheries within your walls, but the curse that haunts your bloodline. A flash of hidden pain swept across the Sheikh's face. The hall caught its breath. Layla's fingers curled into fists at her sides. This was no ordinary conspiracy. The past itself was encroaching, ready to dismantle everything the Sheikh had forged with iron will and fierce determination. The chandeliers flickered as thunder rumbled faintly beyond the palace walls, the desert night conspiring with the tempest inside. The Sheikh's voice broke the thick silence, gravelly and resolved. "Tell me everything, Zara. Spare no detail." Zara's smile was a razor wrapped in silk. "There are secrets in your blood, Sheikh Billionario. Truths that demand justice, and sacrifices that will shatter even the strongest hearts." Layla caught the flicker of turmoil in the Sheikh's eyes, a storm of longing and dread, as Zara's words settled like dust upon the marble floors. The distant sound of whispered chants drifted through the corridors, a haunting melody, promising that the night's revelations were far from over. And beneath the glittering vault of the grand hall, the Empire trembled on the edge of a reckoning. Dark eyes, pools of stormy fire, locked fiercely onto the woman, cloaked in midnight velvet and scarlet, the embodiment of the Empire's gathering darkness. Amina's words trailed like poison, their venom seeping deep, unraveling the threads of loyalty stitched into the palace's grand tapestry. "Blood," she had whispered, a word that echoed relentlessly in the hollows of his soul. The notion of kin turning against kin cleaved through the pride he had built with iron and devotion. His gaze shifted to Layla, whose calm steadiness amid the hurricane was both a balm and a reminder of all that was fragile here. The maid's courage was a spark in the suffocating night, a subtle yet powerful defiance against the shadows looming large. The Sheikh took a slow, heavy breath, each exhale a struggle against the rising tempest within. His voice, when it came, was low and resolute. But the unspoken ache beneath was unmistakable. "Amina, your presence is a wound I thought had long healed. Speak plainly. What ancient debt demands this reckoning tonight?" Amina's eyes glittered with a haunted light, memories flickering behind them like desert mirages. "Your empire, built on the sands of loyalty and secrecy, carries scars deeper than any sword can reach. There are sins woven into your bloodline, secrets kept in silence, sacrifices buried beneath generations of dust." The grand hall held its breath, the courtiers frozen between fascination and fear. The sound of distant water from the courtyard's fountain was a fragile pulse amid the storm, a reminder of life continuing even as their world trembled on the edge. Layla's hands clenched lightly at her sides, the scent of jasmine mingling with the faint musk of sandalwood filling the air around them. She knew this moment pivoted everything: the Empire, the Sheikh, and the fragile alliance cautiously forming between them. The Sheikh's eyes darkened, shadowed by the burden of 1,000 battles fought in silence. He stepped forward, the rustle of his silk robe soft against the marble floor. His presence, both a command and a plea. "Tell me," he demanded, "what curses do I carry? What truths threaten to unravel all I have forged?" Amina's smile was bittersweet, a fragile mask hiding storms. "There is a bloodline, forgotten by many but remembered by few. Hidden daughters, unacknowledged heirs, and the webs spun by those desperate to claim what is rightfully theirs. The empire you believe is unshakable is balanced on a knife's edge, kept there by secrets more fragile than silk thread. Layla stepped beside the sheikh, her voice steady but firm. Secrets buried will always claw their way to the surface. The question is, what will we do when they come? The sheikh's dark gaze softened just a flicker at her words. In her eyes, he saw more than a servant. He saw an unexpected ally, someone who had crossed the boundaries of caste and expectation to stand by his side in the face of unraveling. Suddenly, the heavy double doors groaned open once more, and figures in shadow slipped into the hall. Guards and aides, summoned by the edicts of uncertainty. Their eyes flickered, sharp and searching, as the palace transformed from a sanctuary into a trap, where trust had become the rarest currency. This palace, the sheikh's voice cut through the rising murmurs, is now a fortress of truth and justice. None shall pass without my leave. His hand brushed briefly against Layla's, brief yet electrifying, a silent vow that neither would face the coming storm alone. Amina's gaze roamed the hall, settling finally on the sheikh. The past is restless, Your Highness, and it is awakening. The crowd's murmurs grew, hesitant, like desert winds before a sandstorm. The tension crystallized into a fragile, palpable force, every glance a question, every silence heavy with looming revelation. The sheikh's jaw tightened, the flicker of old pain flashing through his storms. Then let the night bring its secrets. I will face them, not as a god above his court, but as a man who knows the cost of betrayal and the weight of legacy. Layla felt her breath catch as the palace seemed to pulse around them. The grandeur now a gilded cage, the walls holding whispered threats and forgotten promises. Suddenly, a faint sound, a soft thud, echoed from the far corridor. Heads turned sharply, hearts pounding faster, the moment shattering like glass. The sheikh's eyes narrowed, voice sharp as a drawn blade. Find the source of that sound and bring me its bearer. From the marble shadows, a figure stirred, a whispered presence that had lingered, unnoticed until now. The palace's secrets were no longer dormant. Layla's gaze met the sheikh's one last time before turning toward the unknown. The path ahead was wrapped in peril, but also, terrifyingly, possibility. And as the closed doors echoed shut behind the approaching steps, one undeniable truth hung thick in the air. The empire was poised on the brink of a revelation that would forever redefine trust, love, and power. In the hollow silence that followed, the sheikh whispered, barely audible, but burning with intent. Layla, what have we awakened? The grand hall rested in a heavy silence, its golden chandeliers casting trembling light over faces drawn tight with anticipation and fear. The air was thick, saturated with the scent of jasmine and oud, as though the palace itself held its breath, waiting for the final truth to fall like a desert storm. The billionaire sheikh stood tall, yet the storm within his dark eyes was no longer fury, but a deep, aching weariness. His fingers, once clenched so tightly they threatened to crush the silken fabric of his robe, now trembled subtly, betraying a man on the precipice of surrender and hope intertwined. Layla, by his side, met his gaze steadily, her own resolve glowing brighter than ever. She had crossed every boundary set by station and expectation, and in doing so, had become the anchor he desperately needed. From the shadows emerged Zara, the veiled woman whose whispered revelations had stirred the palace into chaos. But tonight, faced with the Sheikh's unwavering presence, her eyes softened, not from defeat, but from respect for the man who chose to meet his past with courage. The Sheikh's voice, low and steady, broke the silence. "Tell me everything." Zara's gaze flickered, allowing a glimmer of the truths buried deep within the Empire's bloodline to surface. There are daughters hidden from sight, heirs born of love and betrayal, a legacy marred by secrets meant to protect, but instead fractured the very foundation you stand upon. The courtiers exchanged wary glances, the reality of their ruler's humanity settling among them like a healing balm over old wounds. Layla stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Secrets will always find their way to the light. What matters now is how we rebuild, not how deeply we fell." The Sheikh nodded, a rare softness touching his features. "The past cannot bind us. It is a lesson and a call to forge a new future." In that moment, the heavy doors swung open once more. Tamir was brought forth, his posture defeated, but eyes locked onto the Sheikh with a hint of remorse. The Sheikh's gaze bore into him, burning away pretenses. "Your sacrifices have cost us dearly." Tamir's voice quivered with truth. "I acted with conviction, Your Highness, to shield you and preserve the Empire. But betrayal was my shadow." The Sheikh's reply was measured, laced with the unforgiving strength of a leader who had seen too much pain. "Sacrifice without trust is nothing but a wound. You will answer for your deeds, but it is not hatred I offer now. It is justice." The hall seemed to exhale collectively, the tension easing as clarity replaced suspicion. Turning to Layla, the Sheikh's eyes held a new light, the walls around his heart melting to reveal the man beneath the throne and the Empire. "You stood by me when others faltered. Your courage has changed more than the course of a single deal. It has altered the fate of my soul." A gentle breeze whispered through the hall, as if the desert itself blessed the moment. The golden mosaics flickered in quiet approval, and the flicker of warm sunlight began to dance through the stained glass, painting the floor with hues of promise. Layla's smile was soft, filled with a courage that had carried her through the storm. "Your Highness, the Empire you guard is not the bricks and gold, but those who stand with you, stronger together than apart." As if carried by that truth, the palace doors opened wide, sunlight pouring in like a baptism. Courtiers and servants alike bowed, their faces no longer masks, but reflections of hope. "Reborn." The Sheikh extended his hand toward Layla, a gesture tender yet resolute. Their fingers intertwined, bridging the gap between worlds and destinies. Together they crossed the hall, stepping into a future unshackled from shadows. Outside, the desert stretched under a rising sun, golden as the unspoken promises now kindling between them. For the first time in years, the Sheikh allowed himself to dream, not as a ruler shackled by secrets and betrayals, but as a man embraced by love and redemption. In the quiet garden behind the palace, jasmine blooms unfurled under the morning light, their fragrance a delicate hymn to new beginnings. Layla sat beside the Sheikh on a marble bench, their hands resting lightly together. No words were needed. The harmony between them whispered volumes, of battles won, scars healed, and a future glimmering with endless possibility. The empire had been tested and tried, but love, stronger than gold and power, had emerged unbroken. As birds sang their dawn chorus, the gamble of trust had paid off. The billionaire Sheikh and the maid who became his equal had rewritten their story, a tale of strength born from vulnerability and the triumph of genuine connection. The grand hall, once a place of whispered secrets and veiled threats, now echoed with laughter and hopes renewed. And beneath the vast desert sky, a new chapter began, one where the past's shadows gave way to the radiant light of love, justice, and peace. Together, they would face the horizon, hand in hand, as sovereigns not just of an empire, but of a destiny forged in trust and unwavering heart. The journey was complete. The reign of the Sheikh Billionario was reborn, stronger, kinder, and endlessly hopeful.